Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out just to this little information evening. It's not going to be very long, but it's just a kind of first step towards making sure that everybody understands what is happening for the LSPs. When I sent my email out a couple of days ago, someone replied and said, "What is an LSP?" which made me realise that quite a few people probably don't know what we mean when we say LSPs, and I shouldn't make that assumption. So LSP means the Late Summer Programme. This is something that has been running at St Chris since the school was founded, and it's a really important part of the curriculum, the offering at St Chris. However, we are very aware, and I am very aware, that it does present a lot of anxieties and worries for some of our students and some of our parents. So I'm really keen to make sure that we're communicating and supporting all the way from the journey between now and when they depart for their LSP in the summer holidays. My name's Emma Roskilly, by the way. I probably should have started with that. I am the assistant head in charge of co-curricular. Okay, so why do we actually do the LSP? What is the point of it, I suppose, is a good place to start. The bullet points on the board are just a few of the key reasons why we do the LSP. An opportunity to continue your learning, but outside of the traditional classroom environment. Presenting students with challenges and helping them to build up resilience and overcome obstacles. Obviously, spending time with each other, developing their social skills and friendships, and becoming more independent. And of course, supporting good mental health, which is something that is just becoming increasingly important year after year. Being outdoors, being away from their devices, which I'll talk a bit more about later, and a bit of a back to nature vibe. And also, of course, fun. In terms of social skills and independence, as a staff member who's been going on the same LSP now for, I think this will be my 18th year going on the same LSP, nothing has been more valuable for me as a teacher in terms of the relationships that I've developed with the students that I teach, getting to know them in a different environment, and really has helped me to support their education in so many other ways. So I think as staff, it's also a great opportunity for us to get to know our young people in a different way. So just a very quick timeline of kind of the journey from now to when you depart. So obviously today is that LSP Information Evening, and I am filming this and I will put it out in the roundup on Friday. And then over the next week, you will receive the initial letter with kind of the overview of the trip, all the details that we have currently, and your consent request, which is quite comprehensive, asks you for all the information, medical information, dietary information, etc. And that's all going to be via Evolve, which hopefully everybody is familiar with. If anyone has any issues with Evolve, please do contact me and I will try and resolve them for you. The deadline for doing that consent is Monday the 6th of November. And I'll talk a little bit about why that deadline exists. But I am aware, and I will talk about this in a while, that for some people they may feel that they are not able to go on LSP. And we did have some instances last year of people withdrawing very late from the LSP, which obviously costs money and causes various problems in terms of bookings and flights and trains and things like that. So I just want to make sure that we've got everything really clear for nice and early in November. Then you will receive the final letter, by which time we'll know things like travel times, and also the kit list, which is really important. And then there'll be lots of opportunities for students to give their input, which I'll talk about again in a little while, but in terms of what they're worried about, what they want support with. Just before we leave, there's a kit and medical and passport check for students that are leaving the country, which is done in school, just to have a final check that we've definitely got everything we need before we leave, and then we depart in the beginning of July. So just to give you an idea of our little stopgaps along the way. Here are the key people in terms of safeguarding when the trips are going out. Based here in school, we obviously have Rich, the head, and Nat Baker, the deputy head. They are likely to both be based here at St Chris, although Rich sometimes likes to rove and go and see some of the LSPs, which is really nice. So they're sort of home base, I suppose. I will be going on the Yorkshire LSP, which is the one that I go on every year. But I will make sure that I am always in constant communication with all of the LSPs. And then the 1, 2 and 3 group LSPs each have a lead and a deputy. So for the 1 group, it's Maggie, who is also the head of the 1 group. And then Cyril Simon is going to be the deputy because they're going to France, so he speaks French, obviously, he is French. And then Jen has been running the 2 group LSP for a few years now. And she'll lead, and then I'm the deputy on that LSP. And then the 3 group LSP is still to be confirmed. I'm just waiting to put the 4 group, 5 group and 6 form LSPs into place, which trips are running and which staff are going on them, and then we will allocate for the 3 group LSP. Last year it was Claire Slater, it may be Claire again, but rest assured it will be somebody senior who is very organised. Just to reassure you, if you are aware, when we run trips, we try to always make sure that they have the quality badge learning outside the classroom. Basically what that means is that the government have made all of these checks. If they don't have that accreditation, then we make all of these checks. But please rest assured that we're always going to be using safe providers. What are our expectations? So it's nice to see some students coming this evening. What do we expect from you? It's really important to have high expectations of our students on LSP, the same as we do when they're in school. When you sign consent for the trip, there is a residential behaviour contract which the pupils are taken through, but the expectations are obviously the same as we would expect, and we very rarely encounter any behavioural difficulties on our LSPs. Obviously, if something happens where a child is deemed to be unsafe, then there is an expectation that the parent would need to come and get them. So a big question that people always have, one of the first questions that people always ask is about mobile phones and devices. This is something that definitely has caused issues in the past on LSPs, and so we've got a really firm policy now in place which we want to really enforce strictly. And that is that pupils are allowed their phones and devices on the journey to and from their destination, but on arrival they then turn in their devices and they're locked away safely and return to them ready for the journey home. There are lots of reasons why we do this. Students don't always like to be prized away from their devices. However, I cannot tell you what a joy it is to watch the 2 group interacting with each other, IRL as they would say, and finding other ways to entertain themselves than always being on the phone. And several of them said to me the summer that's just gone how nice it was, because if they fall out with somebody, there isn't immediately, a text message or something. And it just, I think that they actually, although they don't like it at first, I think they actually really appreciate it. So I just really encourage you to support your child in that, because for some of them that is quite a struggle. Obviously, we will always let them have their phone if they just come and ask for it, if they're feeling homesick and they just want to ring home. Totally understand that they might want to do that. And equally, there will be various contact numbers that you can ring and get hold of your child if you need to. Medical information is another question that people obviously have a lot of concerns about. The initial way to communicate that is obviously via the consent form, and then each trip leader will have consultation with the school nurse, who obviously holds more detailed medical information about all of our students. Each trip is accompanied by qualified first aiders, and if students have more complex medical needs, we will consult with you, have a phone call or have you come in, just so that we can make sure. We have had students with quite significant medical needs in terms of diabetes and things like that, and we are able to cater for those things. So I think the key message for today is that we're really, really keen for every child to come on the LSP, access the LSP, feel supported on the LSP and be able to get the most out of the LSP. Just a note about passports, because it's another one that always comes up. The 1 group and the 3 group will of course need passports because they're going to France. The passport, if you're going to France, must be valid for up to 3 months from the date you get back from your trip. So just have a little check of your dates if you think that they might be coming close. We will ask you for the passport numbers, and we will collect all passports in at the beginning of the trip and hold on to them and then return them at the end so students can't lose them. Important one, if your child is a non-UK or EU citizen, they don't need a visa. If they're travelling to France as part of an educational trip and they are from outside the UK or the EU, they can travel without a visa. We take a letter from the head that explains the purpose of our visit, and they are allowed in and out of the country. However, you may want to make sure that they have at least 6 months on their passport rather than 3, just because they sometimes can get a little bit funny about that one. Okay, so now non-attendance. This has just been something that has been creeping in, and I think a big part of it is perhaps because of the dreaded COVID. I think students perhaps have a lot more anxiety about being, separated from their families for that reason. I think mental health plays a huge part in it, anxiety plays a huge part in it, gender identity plays a huge part of it. There are lots and lots and lots of really quite complex and varied reasons as to why some of our students feel extremely nervous about going on LSP. So I wanted to just acknowledge that that is the case. We know that's the case, and we certainly aren't going to be forcing anybody to do anything that they really don't feel able to do. However, our starting assumption is that all students will go on LSP. And what I'm asking you to do after this meeting is to reach out to me and let me know if you have concerns, so that we can start to have a dialogue and put a support program in place to get your child on that LSP, and not just to get them on the LSP, to make sure that they enjoy the LSP, they thrive, and they get something out of the LSP. That's definitely the goal. If we reach the conclusion with you that for one reason or another your child is not going to be able to come on the LSP, we will look at putting provision in school, because in the past everybody's gone and there hasn't been provision in school, but I think it's something that I would like to look at. So that will be available. There is occasionally instances where people don't want their child to go on LSP because they want to take them on holiday early. If that is what you would like to do, you need to contact the head in the usual way to request a week's absence, because it is a part of the usual school year and part of the compulsory curriculum. The cost of the LSP is added to your school fees and part of your contract with the school, but if your child ends up not going on an LSP and that is something that has been agreed, then obviously we will do our best to reimburse you. Okay, so that's all that side of things out of the way. Now for the exciting part, we're just going to talk you through where are you actually going and what you're actually going to be doing. So we're trying to kind of build up year after year, develop new skills and make the LSPs varied from one another. So for the first time this year, our 1 group are going to be heading off to France. This is something that we feel is a nice step up for those of them that are in the D group, who I believe in the D group they go to the Isle of Wight. So we wanted to make sure that it felt like a bit more of a challenge. But we are also very conscious that for the 1 group, some of them, this may well be their first time staying away from home. So for that reason, we've kept it really short. So their LSP runs Monday to Thursday, and they're going to Les Vosges in France, which is absolutely beautiful mountain region here in France. One of the key reasons why Cyril is helping us to organise this trip is to get lots of language opportunities. So we're going to build lots of opportunities to practice your French and immerse yourself in the culture. Expect beautiful weather, and the journey is quite long, so you will be travelling by train, and it's 2 trains, or 3 trains if you go from Letchworth, on the Eurostar, and then a coach to the centre at the end. So there will be opportunities for the students to kind of get involved in, being independent, you know, helping find where the trains are, those kinds of things, because I think those are quite useful skills. So key bit of advice is to not overpack. They are only going to be there for 3 nights and they are going to be changing trains, but hopefully they won't need to take gigantic suitcases with them. They are a nice small year group and there are a lot of staff going with them who will be very much holding on to them, making sure they get to where they need to go. So it should be quite an exciting journey, I think. And then they arrive at their accommodation, which is called Le Pont du Métier, which is something about a bridge, I think. Anyone translate?
Bridge of something.
The bridge of something.
Yeah.
It is accommodation that is designed for schools and for families, and the maximum number of people in a room is 6. I know that's often a worry. It may well be that we don't need to fill all the rooms up to 6. And that is something that Maggie, I know, will look at really, really carefully. Staff will be on the same corridor to look after the students at night, make sure they're safe. And we will work with the students to make sure that they are sharing a room with people that they feel comfortable with. And, you know, some students prefer to have not too many people in their room. Some of them love having a room full of all their friends, and that's part of the sleepover vibe. But it's lovely accommodation. It's got an on-site swimming pool and cinema. Yeah, it looks lovely. So you'll have to report back to us and tell us if you think it's up to snuff. So what are you going to be doing out there? So you'll arrive on the Monday and do some evening activities, probably make the most of the swimming pool and the cinema, I would imagine. And then there are some outdoor activities, so hiking in the mountains. Now, when I say hiking in the mountains, do not fear, that doesn't mean trekking up a great big steep incline. It means, you know, a gentle stroll. Here's a nice picture through picturesque scenery. A high rope course, and then you're going to be going kayaking on, and I apologise for my pronunciation, Gare de Mer Lake, or Gérard Mer, maybe, lake, which is down here, which looks absolutely gorgeous with the mountains in the background. And then there is also a circus tent on site, and you will be doing circus skills workshops, obviously the swimming pool and cinema that I've already mentioned. So a nice varied range of activities. And then you'll travel up to school and likely to do a stop off at Nancy, which is a beautiful French town where you can practice your French and maybe buy some chocolates or something to take back with you. So that's what the one group are going to be doing. Another thing that always seems to be a worry for our young people is what they're going to eat. So the food is provided by the centre. The breakfast is on site. It looks from the pictures that I found that it's going to be a sort of that is apple juice there, by the way. It looks like it'll be a continental style breakfast, and then they will be provided with a packed lunch if they're out doing activities all day. And then there's a hot meal in the evening, and they have assured us that all dietary requirements are catered for, including vegetarian and vegan, because that's obviously really important. The consent forms will allow you to give detailed information about not just your allergies and things like that, but just likes and dislikes, and we will feed all of that onto the centre. Kit, there isn't really any specialist kit for this, and we will send out a detailed packing list closer to the time, but I'm just keeping the slide in there so that we have the consistent format. Okay, so that's the one group LSP. So those of you that are in the one group, you are free to leave now, but I suspect it might be good for you to hear about what the 2 group are doing and what the 3 group are doing, because that will be you next year and the year after. So here's Jenny to tell us about the 2 group LSP to Yorkshire.
Thank you very much. Right, so yes, I didn't realise there was a picture of me and my group from a couple of years ago. But as Emma said, lots of us have been on the 2 group LSP for many, many years. We've got a team of staff that absolutely love going on this trip every year. And it has been a brilliant way for us to kind of build relationships with our students that we then take all the way through to the sixth form, which is where I spend most of my time. So we do have a bit of progression from the one group trip. So we are staying a longer period of time, so away from Saturday until Friday, the 12th of July. And the activities probably, again, a step up in terms of the level of challenge, and trying just to kind of build students' resilience, build their kind of, sense of pushing themselves a little bit to kind of really achieve. And this works really, really well. So our travel, we travel by train as well. This tends to be a much quicker and more efficient way of getting up to Lancaster. So we have the opportunity for students to either meet us in Letchworth or they can meet us at Euston Station, where from there it's about 3 hours up to Lancaster, where we are met by our support team, which takes us 40 minutes there by minibus to Ingleton. Okay. We stay at a lovely set of lodges called Pinecroft. So it's a really nice setup. We have the whole site to ourselves, so there's nobody else on site, just our St Chris team. The pupils will again be in small rooms. The maximum size is 6 students, so it's not a kind of massive great dormitory, because we know it's really important on these trips for people to be able to get a good night's sleep. We also will discuss with the students, we get them to have lots of input into who they would like to share rooms with, because again, that's really important in terms of being able to relax. So there's lots of those considerations in terms of, do they want a quieter space? Do they want to be near gender neutral bathrooms? All those kind of things we can kind of build in to make them feel nice and secure once they are on the trip. Again, activity-wise, we have a fantastic range of activities. Again, different levels of challenge. So we have abseiling, climbing, caving, mountain day, which again may be a little bit more challenging than the walks on the trips lower down the school. We do a gill scramble, which is my absolute favourite activity of the week. So you're kind of jumping in and out of a little stream, and it's absolutely beautiful. And then kayaking and canoeing on Coniston Water, which is, again, just a really lovely environment to be in. So fantastic levels of kind of challenge, but also still that support where we're encouraging the students to do as much as they can, but there is never that kind of pressure. They're never forced to do something they are not comfortable with, but we will just encourage them to kind of push themselves a little bit, challenge themselves, and then getting to know them and seeing how, sort of where their kind of limits are. But most of them will come back having given everything a really, really good go, knowing that they are supported by fantastic instructors. They also see us pushing ourselves, which I think is a really important thing. You know, we're sort of showing them that we have things that we find scary and challenging, and I think that really helps to sort of build those relationships all the way through the school. Catering, our lovely Emma does the catering on this trip now, having done it several times. We know exactly what kind of food the children need, and obviously we will look really carefully at their sort of food needs on the consent forms, but we do also sort of communicate. We really want them to have plenty of food, but also food that they are going to enjoy. And I think last year it worked particularly well. You can always tell by how much leftovers we have at the end of the day, and there were virtually no leftovers at all. So nobody was hungry, and they had a really good sort of range of food with a balance of sort of comfort food, but also really healthy options as well. So something for everybody. And you can see we also get a pizza van in one night, which is always extremely popular. And he's started to gauge now, the pizza man, how much our children can actually get through after a day of activities. So that's always exciting. Again, when Rich comes up to visit, we get him helping as well. So that's a very important part. We're all hands-on. So kit list, there will be a bit more sort of specific kit required for this trip. You'll be given obviously a full and detailed list a little bit later in the year, but that will obviously include things like proper walking boots and waterproofs, because the Lake District does get quite a lot of that relief rainfall that the students learn about in geography. But there are opportunities if you really struggle to kind of, you know, get the right kit. Real Adventure, who are our sort of team working with us there, do have spare waterproofs. So if they feel like your student needs a little bit extra, that would be absolutely fine. And they do have some walking boots to lend as well. But obviously, if you have your own, it's a lot more comfortable. So we do encourage you maybe not to buy them too early, because we know those feet can grow in between the sort of vital times, but also give enough time to kind of wear walking boots in a little bit so they're comfortable on the mountain days. So again, the list is quite comprehensive, so we do like you to sort of check that really, really carefully. What we do, because they are big bags with all of that kit in, is the students tend to bring those in on the Friday before we leave, and drop them off in the outdoor gym. And we then take all of those up in a big kit van. So that means that they're not worrying about carrying big bags on the journey, on the train. They're just carrying with, working with a small rucksack on the day. And that is then brought back to school at the end of the trip. So the only difference is then for any students getting off the train at Euston on the way back, they do have to carry their big bags, but we obviously help them. There are plenty of members of staff there to help them carry those bags for that return journey. Okay. But yeah, a decent day sack also helpful because it means you can sort of have everything you need on a day-to-day basis. But it is an absolutely fantastic trip. It's one I always want to go on every single year. And again, I've sort of got, you know, really positive relationships that I have built with the students and that we've all built with the students as we've moved through the school with them. And it is fantastic. We've had a couple of students in the last couple of years who were really reticent about going on the trip, but ended up pushing themselves, but also being supported and having the most amazing time, and now desperate to start doing more adventurous activities, not worried about going on the 3 Group LSP, but also building really positive friendships. It does really help to cement friendships throughout the year group. And it also gives those students maybe who find day-to-day school quite challenging a chance to sort of shine in front of their peer group. And it's really, really positive. So again, it's really fantastic if we can get as many students as possible on these trips. We have, you know, such a good result at the end of that. So hopefully we can have all of your children there on the trips with us. All right, so we'll hand back to Emma and talk about 3.
Okay, so one more to go. Please feel free to leave if you need to get off. But I'm going to talk about the 3 groups. So this is year 9. So we ran this trip for the first time last year to Morzine in the French Alps. Again, it's another step up in terms of challenge. But so it's the same length as the 2 group trip, but obviously they are in France. There are a range of activities on this trip, so it's not all kind of outdoor pursuits. The weather was absolutely beautiful. That was probably my one thing that I was jealous of when I was in Yorkshire. And the location is just absolutely, what you can see from the photo, gorgeous. So this is a slight change from last year. Last year we did do the Eurostar and then the train to the region. But because there's such a large year group, so there's 74 in the year group, and because they are going for such a long time and they need to take a lot of stuff with them, it was just felt that train journey was quite challenging, changing trains and not necessarily trains that were stopping for very long and all of that. So we made the decision this year that we're going to do a door-to-door coach journey. So the coach will leave from St. Chris, drive to France and end up at the destination. It is a long journey. It's 10 hours, but in the big picture, I think that is probably easier for our young people than the train journey. And of course, they can sleep on the train. It's likely to be an early start, but we will try to not be crazy early. And yeah, they'll have their devices so they can, watch a film or whatever they want on the coach on the way there. Then the accommodation, again, this is slightly different from last year. Last year they were all based in this lodge here, L'Escalade, but this year they're split between 2 lodges. So half of them will be at L'Escalade and half of them will be at Les Flocons. They are beautiful chalets. You can see from the pictures, they're very similar to each other. They have indoor and outdoor kind of social areas, basketball courts, volleyball courts, pétanque courts. The bedrooms each have a bathroom, which is very nice. And the absolute maximum to a room is 8 on this trip, although the vast majority are 5 or 6 person rooms. Having them in the 2 different locations hopefully will make it a bit less overwhelming. So we'll be around about 40 at each location. And the locations are a 20-minute walk from each other, and obviously they will be meeting up during the day on activities. But we will work really closely with the children to make sure that they are, at the same chalet as their friendship groups, and also it's an opportunity that if there are people that they're less comfortable being around as well. Again, the food, very important part. So meals are done at the chalet. Pupils that I've spoken to that went on this trip last year said the food was really, really, really excellent. Not as good as the 2-group LSP, but close. And the people that run the chalet actually contacted me to say how impressed they were with how much our students could eat. They said they've never had a school that has eaten everything that was given to them and then wanted more. So they were really impressed by that because they're quite into their food. They describe it as wholesome, plentiful, and made just for young people's tastes. One key thing, vegetarians are catered for, of course, but vegans may need to supplement their meals, and we did have a vegan on the trip last year who supplemented their meals, and we do get a fridge, and we do obviously provide stuff, but if you indicate that you are vegan on the consent form, we will have that conversation. Allergies are, of course, catered for. So here's a sample programme. So this is obviously from last year. So the travel is different. You won't be travelling by train. But other than that, the rest of it is the same, not necessarily in this order. So there's lots of outdoor activities like orienteering, high ropes, trekking, kayaking. But there's also things like going to the French market in Morzine, going to a local village, media night, team building activities, going on a big chairlift up into the mountains, which is very exciting. And then they have lots of activities that they lay on in the evenings, like table tennis, films, things like that. So it's an excellent, excellent trip. We were really, really impressed with it last year. So yes, those will be the activities, but not necessarily in that order. In terms of kit, again, a lot of this is kind of similar to the 2-group. So if you went on the 2-group LSP last year and you haven't grown, then you can probably reuse a lot of the stuff. Here's a kind of a little overview, but we will send this out with the consent form because it is probably the one where they need the most kind of specialist equipment. So things in red are kind of the more specialist items. Okay, so thank you very much for sticking with me to the bitter end. We really look forward to seeing you in the summer. Obviously, I've let you know Maggie will be leading the 1-group and Jenny will be leading the 2-group. But at the moment, I am your port of call for 1, 2 and 3 group. If you have any questions, if you could contact me. Ooh. And then we will do the handoff to the trip leaders a little bit further down the line. So at this stage of the planning, it's all going via me, please. We're very aware that this does present anxiety, so please do reach out, email me, ring me, and we can make sure that we get everybody on the trip feeling happy and having a whale of a time. Does anyone have any questions at this moment? No, you probably will have some when you get home, but you can always email me. All right, well, thanks ever so much for coming. I hope that was useful.